The college season is about 1 month away, so let's break down some of the best returners in the 2024 NBA Draft. Donovan Klingon enters this season as the best sophomore big in this year's draft cycle. Right now, I have him pegged as a potential top 10 pick. The UConn center stands at 7'2" with a 7'7" wingspan and a massive 9'6" standing reach. That would have been the highest of any big in the 2023 draft. Klingon's role in college and at the next level is relatively straightforward but very effective. He's going to be a play finisher on both ends of the floor, catching and dunking everything at the rim on offense, and then also patrolling the paint on defense. The thing to watch with Klingon is how he responds to being a much bigger focal point on his team. Last season for UConn, he was behind Adama Sanogo, so he was only on the floor for less than a third of his team's total minutes. The Huskies center played 13 minutes a game, but he averaged a really solid 7 points and 6 rebounds, and then nearly 2 blocks a game. All of those stats could go way up this season. Evidently, Klingon is going to dominate near the basket. Last year, 9 out of 10 of his shots were right at the rim, and he converted on 71% of them. His volume was high too, despite his lack of minutes, so the thing to watch out for on this side of the ball is any signs of a jumper. Klingon will reportedly shoot more threes this season, which won't be hard since he only shot and missed one as a freshman, so if he can make open trays and also be somewhat of a pick and pop threat, that will elevate his draft stock even more. Defensively, I expect it to be a similar story to last season, when the 7'2" big man was putting a lid on the rim. Klingon is really tall and long, but he's also strong and thick for being so young. He's not exactly light-footed, but he does move well around the court, and the area that he has to cover right now is mostly limited to in or around the paint. With more minutes and responsibility, I'll be tracking Klingon's fouls as well. He averaged almost 6 fouls per 40 minutes as a freshman, so that is a slight improvement point to focus on. And finally, even though UConn will do well to keep him out of these situations, we'll have to check whether Klingon can defend in space to any extent. Australian point guard Tyrese Proctor is back for his second season at Duke, and at this stage, I see him as a top 20 pick. Proctor is a shifty playmaker at around 6'5", and I like him best when he's operating out of ball screens. This means both as a shooter, where right now he's pretty comfortable rising into a mid-range pull-up after his big sets a pick, but also I like him as a passer in the pick and roll. Proctor was a steady decision maker all season long as a freshman, posting 119 assists to just 58 turnovers. He's poised reading second-level defenses, and he's accurate with his deliveries, namely when he can get into the paint and then kick it out, or when he does that, but then dumps it to a forward around the dunker spot. It is worth noting though that Proctor's usage was lower than other prospects in his position. He shared ball handling duties quite a bit with the likes of Kyle Filipowski, Jeremy Roach, and even Dariq Whitehead last year, so he didn't get as much time on the ball as a point guard might. Filipowski and Roach are back this season, and Duke also brought in Jared McCain and Caleb Foster, so this trend will be worth tracking. As a result of this, Proctor also spent plenty of time spotting up off the ball. Nearly half of his total shots as a freshman were three-pointers, which is encouraging, but it's also somewhat of a double-edged sword. Proctor was alright from deep on high volume. He shot 32% on more than 4 threes a game, which ideally goes up conversion-wise, but it is true that he was easing into American basketball during his first few months as a Blue Devil. His flashes from the mid-range and his 78% from the free throw line tell me that the Australian guard is going to be a good three-point shooter, although I am looking for Proctor to add to his range. In his sophomore campaign, I'm curious to see how Proctor will fare at the basket. He didn't get there all that much last year, taking just 70 shots near the rim and making 56% of them. Proctor's poise out of screens is commendable, like I've been saying, but it's also true that he can be overly reliant on them. He's only an okay athlete, he's not that dynamic in that he can struggle to accelerate in the half court, and he still has a tough time consistently creating separation against more athletic defenders. Proctor is not strong enough to shrug guards off of him, and he's also not overly quick, bursty, or long to always build space between him and his defenders. Last season, this was a learning curve for him, but the hope is that this won't be as big of an issue in his second year. However, Proctor is going to need to perform at a reliably high level game in, game out with the bevy of ball handlers that Duke has behind him this season. Another Duke sophomore who I'll be keeping an eye on this year is Mark Mitchell. I see the 6'9" wing as a bit of a do-it-all player with strong positional size and athleticism that can be used on both ends, all over the court. What stands out to me the most is Mitchell's motor. He's always active and contributing to his team by cutting, crashing the boards, and really just causing havoc by being assertive with how he moves. The knock on him could be that he doesn't specialize in any one thing, but seeing as how Mitchell will be a little under 21 before draft night, it's still fine that his versatility shows up all around. At this stage of the game, Mitchell is going to take most of his shots at the basket, where he has a pretty funky game. He plays with a rhythm that isn't typical, but he can put the ball on the floor a little bit, particularly in a straight line, and then finish with push shots, floaters, leaners, and short jumpers. I also like the brief flashes that Mitchell has shown as a pick-and-roll ball handler. And I am curious to see if he shows more of this, but like we touched on, Duke is going to have plenty of guards playing on the ball. So this is where streamlining Mitchell's role might come into play. The Duke wing can also be used in the open court as a grab-and-go threat. He pushes the tempo in transition, and he can make simple reads over the top at 6'9" with a wingspan around 7 feet. I also believe that he has some drive and kick potential in the half court, but he will have to get stronger in order to maximize this. I say this because right now, Mitchell cannot get deep enough position in the paint a lot of the time, and this will be a problem if he's mostly going to play near the rim. For me, it's his lower body in particular that needs work. Mitchell's pop off the floor requires some loading time, so it becomes easier for defenders to recover and disrupt him. The Duke wing's burst in congested areas is also below average, and Mitchell's ball handling isn't that creative. He needs to get lower and more flexible, so he's prone to turnovers or blocks in traffic. For this season, and for his draft stock, Mitchell's swing skill is his outside shot. Mitchell needs some leverage from three-point land in order to attack closeouts to the basket, put the ball on the floor, create for others, and so on. He shot 35% from 3 as a freshman, which looks decent, but it was only on 19 makes. It's somewhat encouraging that Mitchell is a solid free throw shooter, but there is a lot going on with his shot. It has a bit of a hitch up top, his lower body moves around too much, and he's very pronounced as a lefty when he's shooting. Florida sophomore Riley Kugel is an early second rounder for me right now, but he has the tools to rise into the first round. The 6'5" prospect can play the 2 and the 3, but I don't think he had a truly defined role as a freshman. Kugel finished his first season for Florida on a very strong note, so the hope is that he carries that over. At his best, Kugel is athletic with a quick first step and a frame that should fill out well. He got to the rim often and self-creating a lot of his attempts there, but his conversion rate will still need to go up. The Florida man puts pressure on the paint whenever he gets downhill, but I think he's more of a below finisher than his tools indicate. I want to see the Florida guard diversify his finishing package a little bit more. Right now, I find Kugel too reliant on scoop finishes, and he can go up a bit soft at times. However, the means are there for him to finish through or over bigs. Regardless of whether he ends up as more of a guard or as more of a wing, the three-pointer is crucial for Kugel, as he will be playing off the ball quite often. Kugel shot about 38% from 3 in his first year in college, which is pretty good considering that he wasn't just spotting up or taking easy shots. Most certainly, there were times when Kugel was showing real flashes as a shot creator off the dribble. However, he took less than 100 attempts from deep, so I want to see him break that threshold this season. I say this particularly for Kugel because his free throw numbers are pretty iffy at 66%, but I trust that this will be no problem for the Gators scorer as he steps into a bigger role as a sophomore. Then, to solidify and theoretically raise his stock, playmaking and defense are both big items for Kugel. I think that he can get more out of his athleticism as a passer. Kugel can collapse defenses with his athletic tools, so being able to get into the paint and then make the right read with accuracy is important. If he grows in terms of facilitating for others, then I think Kugel will play as more of a guard rather than an off-ball wing who spots up and slashes instead of creating off the dribble. On the other side of the ball, Kugel has solid positional size if he's defending guards, and his long arms allow for some versatility. There were games where Florida had him guard bigger wings, but I prefer him on smaller players. Kugel can keep other ball handlers in front of him, he uses his chest well, and his length allows for steals and deflections. It's off the ball though, where I think Kugel still has to improve his motor and concentration. It's not worrying right now, but he does have his lapses where he's not as locked in as he should be. Building on this and also continuing to show more multi-positional potential would elevate Kugel into a surefire first-round pick.